My reality seemed to have left me and was now wandering around nearby. I hope it can find me. And when I awoke, I was alone. This bird had flown. So I lit a fire. Isn't it good? Norwegian Wood. I was going to be a concert pianist. I had talent, and people recognized it and made a fuss over me while I was growing up. I won competitions, had top grades in the conservatory, and was set to study in Germany after graduation. Not a cloud on the horizon. Everything worked out perfectly, and when it didn't, there was always somebody there to fix it. But then one day something happened and it all blew apart. I was in my senior year at the conservatory and I had an important competition coming up. I practiced for it constantly, but all of a sudden the little finger of my left hand stopped moving. I don't know why, it just did. I tried massaging it, soaking it in hot water, even taking off from practice for a few days. Nothing helped. So then I got scared and went to the doctors. They tried all kinds of tests, but they couldn't come up with anything. There was nothing wrong with the finger itself, and the nerves were okay, they said. The problem must be psychological. They told me to get away from the piano for a while. So I went to recuperate at my grandmother's place on the coast in Izu. I figured I'd forget about that particular competition and really relax. Spend a few weeks away from the piano doing anything I wanted. But it was hopeless. Piano was all I could think about. Maybe my finger would never move again. How would I live if that happened? The same thoughts kept going round and round in my brain, and no wonder. Piano had been my whole life up to that point. I started playing when I was 4, and I grew up thinking about the piano and nothing else. People pay attention to me for that one thing, my talent at the piano. Take the piano away from a girl who's grown up like that, and what's left? So then, snap. My mind became a complete jumble. Total darkness. That was the end of my dream of becoming a concert pianist. I spent 2 months in the hospital. My fingers started to move shortly after I went in, so I was able to return to the conservatory and graduate, but something inside me had vanished. Some jewel of energy or something had disappeared, evaporated from inside my body. The doctor said I lacked the mental strength to become a professional pianist and advised me to abandon the idea. So, after graduating, I took pupils and taught them at home. But the pain I felt was excruciating. It felt as if my life had ended. Here I was in my early 20s, and the best part of my life had ended. Do you see how terrible that would be? I had had my hands on such potential, and I woke up one day and all of it was gone. No one would applaud me. No one would make a big fuss over me. No one would tell me how wonderful I was. I spent day after day in the house teaching neighborhood children Bayer exercises and sonatinas. I felt so miserable. I cried all the time to think what I had missed. I would hear about people who were far less talented than I was, taking second place in a competition or holding a recital in such and such a hall, and the tears would pour out of me. My parents walked around me on tiptoe, afraid of hurting me, but I knew how disappointed they were. All of a sudden, the daughter they had been so proud of was a returnee from a mental hospital. They couldn't even marry me off. When you're living with people, you sense what they're feeling, and I hated it. I was afraid to go out, afraid the neighbors were talking about me, so then, snap. It happened again. The jumble, the darkness. It happened when I was 24, and this time I spent 7 months in a sanatorium. An insane asylum with high walls and locked gates. A filthy place without pianos. I didn't know what to do with myself. All I knew was I needed to get out of there as soon as I could. So I struggled desperately to get better. 7 months. A long 7 months. That's when my wrinkles got started. I hadn't been out of the hospital for long when I met a man. He was a year younger than me, an engineer who worked at an airplane manufacturing company and one of my pupils. A nice man. He didn't say a lot, but he was warm and sincere. He had been taking lessons from me for 6 months when all of a sudden, he asked me to marry him. Just like that. One day when we were having tea after his lesson. Can you believe it? We had never even dated or held hands. He took me completely off guard. I told him I couldn't get married. I said I liked him and thought he was a nice person, but that for certain reasons I couldn't marry him. I explained everything to him with complete honesty, that I had been hospitalized twice for mental breakdowns. I told him everything, what the cause had been, my condition, and the possibility that it could happen again. But he said he didn't care, that he didn't just want to sleep with me, he wanted to marry me, to share everything I had inside me. And he meant it. He was the kind of person who would only say what he really meant and do anything he said. So I agreed to marry him. I figured that as long as I was with him, I will be all right. As long as I was with him, my troubles would stay away. That's the most important thing for a sickness like ours, a sense of trust. If I put myself in this person's hands, I'll be okay. If my condition starts to worsen even the slightest bit, if a screw comes loose, he'll notice right away, and with tremendous care and patience, he'll fix it. He'll tighten the screw again, put all the jumbled threads back into place. No more snap. I was so happy. Life was so great. I felt as if someone had pulled me out of a cold, raging sea and wrapped me in a blanket and laid me in a warm bed. I had a baby 2 years after we were married, and then my hands were really full. I practically forgot about my sickness. I'd get up in the morning and do the housework and take care of the baby and feed my husband when he came home from work. It was the same thing day after day, but I was happy. It was probably the happiest time of my life. When our daughter entered kindergarten, I started playing again, little by little, not for anyone else, but for myself.